In this video, Jerry is going to build his own secret underground bunker, a place that's completely hidden away and belongs to him and him alone. But that's not all. We'll also witness the entire journey of building the perfect bunker. We'll dig with our own hands, reinforce the walls, and design the space to be as strong and comfortable as you can possibly imagine. Jerry is a young man who runs a YouTube channel called Jerry Rig Everything, where he takes on seriously intense challenges and adventures. The kind that can take him months or even years to complete. Step by step, he turned his crazy idea into reality, letting us live the entire experience in detail. Make sure to like the video because today's adventure is one you've never seen before. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the incredible things happening here on the channel. Let's go! This bunker provides protection from many different dangers, from powerful explosions to nuclear blasts. According to Jerry, it could even be a safe hideout if a zombie apocalypse ever happened. It's been his dream since he was a child. At first, he planned to use a regular shipping container, but he changed his mind and chose a giant pipe design instead. This pipe is the same type used for stormwater drainage systems, and it's built in a spiral shape inside. It has a diameter of 12 feet, which is huge, and he chose this particular design for several reasons. First, it can last for more than 100 years without any issues. And of course, its massive size gives it plenty of interior space. These pipes are transported using two huge trucks, one carrying the pipe itself, and another with a crane to lift it. A single 20-foot pipe weighs around 4,000 pounds, about 2 tons. There's also a large crane used to hold and secure the entire pipe in place. The two pipe sections together cost around $32,000 in 2023. One of the great things about these pipes is that they can be buried up to 100 meters deep without any problem. Since they're commonly used worldwide for drainage systems, their installation and engineering are well known among engineers and contractors. Everything was tested, verified, and designed to accommodate up to 6 people inside. Jerry had to start working quickly before the snow arrived, especially since his neighbors were getting suspicious about what he was doing. Although these pipes can be buried up to 100 meters deep, Jerry decided to place his only 1.8 meters below ground. He did this because at that depth, he could benefit from the natural insulation of the earth, which keeps the bunker warm during winter. And winters there are brutally cold. Also, the pipe is actually stronger underground than it would be above ground. That's because when buried, the surrounding soil creates massive pressure that reinforces its strength, allowing it to withstand far greater loads without any issues. So now it's time to study the spot where they'll dig. Since the pipe needs to go down 6 feet, and it's 3.5 meters, about 12 feet in diameter, they'll have to dig down 5.5 meters in total. Next, Jerry needed to secure the pipe edges so that it could be lifted and positioned properly. It also had to be welded tightly to avoid any future problems. So they built a perfectly measured circular frame around the pipe. Every part was welded precisely. Thankfully, the welding was completed successfully, though they did face a few small measurement errors along the way, which they managed to fix. Once that was done, it was time for the heavy work. The excavator arrived and they began digging up the backyard to make room for the pipe. First, they removed the top layer of grass, section by section. There were 2 excavators working together, one digging and the other moving the dirt to a dumping area. But they didn't just dump it anywhere. They placed it in a designated soil storage area so that it could be reused later. Of course, before digging, they made sure there were no gas or water lines underground, because hitting those would cause huge problems. Jerry used a laser level stick to ensure the measurements were accurate down to the millimeter. Once the dimensions were confirmed, the excavator continued digging. Each time they used the laser stick again to double-check the accuracy. Finally, when they reached the bottom, they had to finish the last layer manually because the excavator couldn't go any deeper. And if it did, it might get stuck. To avoid that, they completed the final digging by hand. Then the crane arrived and started lifting one of the massive pipes, raising it to a very high and, honestly, terrifying height. The crane alone cost $1,800 for the whole day. And with that, the first pipe was finally lowered into place. Now it was time for the second pipe.
Tube number 2. A single 40-foot culvert would have reduced our flanges by 50%. If our hole was a bit further from the tube, we would need a far larger crane for later. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss this whole project coming together.
After moving and positioning it, both pipes were now underground, and the plan was to secure them tightly together. They started adjusting the heights, since the two pipes weren't perfectly aligned, and the bolts had to fit precisely. Finally, the first bolt was installed, and those bolts are extremely strong, built to hold the pipes firmly in place. Of course, once the soil is packed around them, that will help hold everything even more. But the bolts still add an extra layer of safety and stability. Now that the pipes were connected, it was time to build an elevator shaft to allow access in and out of the bunker. They began cutting steel plates using a grinder and adjusted the measurements carefully. Before welding the steel pieces together, they had to make sure all the edges were smooth and perfectly sized so they'd fit tightly. After welding and assembling multiple steel sections, the result was a steel cage. The cage itself was heavier than the truck lifting it, so as soon as it touched the ground, the truck was actually lifted slightly too. Afterward, they welded large metal beams together to form the outer frame of the elevator. The work was exhausting, especially because they were dealing with massive weights, and the underground temperature was quite high. However, it was still suitable enough for people to live in, though not for long periods. They planned to install 2 ventilation systems, one for biological protection and another for heating and cooling. The only issue with the heating and cooling system was that it required a lot of power, around 1,500 watts. That's why Jerry chose a smart bed that could literally heat and cool itself. Even better, you could set one side hot and the other side cold. The bed could even track your sleep, heart rate, and eye movement, basically monitoring everything. But there was one problem. It only worked when Wi-Fi was available. So if the world ever ended and there was no internet, that bed would be useless. The cranes weren't just meant for digging. They could also lift anything heavy, so they used one to raise the elevator structure. The crane lifted it smoothly, and finally, everything worked perfectly. They managed to position the elevator upright, then added metal plates to cover the structure. These plates alone cost $6,149, and the crane truly proved its worth. Capable of lifting all that weight and moving through tight spaces between houses and trees. It was definitely worth every dollar spent renting it. After that, they carefully lowered the elevator into the bunker. To keep it steady, they had welded extra supports to its base so it could grip the ground firmly. They went down and dug spaces for those supports, allowing the elevator to anchor itself naturally into the soil. Then they connected the pipe frame and the elevator frame using heavy-duty bolts. Everything down there was solid metal, not just wood. At this point, they needed to waterproof the pipes because constant exposure to rainwater could cause serious problems over time. Unfortunately, during welding, a small fire broke out, damaging a few parts. But they managed to fix everything. Since the entrance and exit of the bunker had to be extremely secure, they took extra precautions. If anyone went inside and something collapsed, it could become a tomb instead of a bunker. And because there was only one elevator shaft, they decided to add another one as a backup, just in case of emergencies. After cutting a new opening on the other side of the bunker, they began polishing and cleaning the interior of the pipe. The floor needed to be completely level so people and equipment could move easily inside. Welding sometimes burned small areas of the pipe, so they had to double-check that everything was properly fixed and sealed. Because once they covered it with soil, there should be no leaks at all. It was also nearly impossible to walk on the spiral inner walls of the pipe, as they were very slippery. So they decided to install a full floor inside the pipe. Once installed, it provided much more space and comfort for moving around. To connect the entrance shaft with the bunker, they used a tool called a magnetic drill. It sticks to the metal surface using an electromagnet and drills large holes through the wall of the pipe or elevator frame. This allowed them to insert bolts and secure the two parts together. They also used support straps and concrete blocks around the bunker to make sure it didn't rise or shift when they began refilling it with soil and gravel. Next, they applied a waterproof adhesive material to seal everything. This would prevent any leaks once the bunker was fully buried. They mixed special materials together to create an anti-rust, corrosion-resistant coating, ensuring the pipes would last for decades. They painted every single part of the pipes, and even painted the elevator too. Finally, they brought in a circular metal plate to cover the seam where the two pipes were welded together, reinforcing the entire structure for maximum strength. And if you think, my dear viewer, that all that's left is to just dump some dirt on top of the bunker, you're completely wrong. In reality, it's much more complicated than that. The original soil was naturally compacted over millions of years, but once it was dug up and moved, it became very loose and soft, especially since rainwater had likely soaked into it. So they brought in a machine called a gravel thrower, which drops soil from a height of 60 feet. But it has to be done in a specific way because, as I said, the soil is very soft now. The gravel they're using is small, but solid enough to help compress the loose dirt. As it falls from the truck, it starts compacting the ground naturally. Then they go underneath and add gravel beneath the bunker itself to fill any air gaps, because if there are any, the pipe could shift or vibrate. And that's definitely something they don't want happening. They also use a machine to press and compact the gravel tightly under the pipe. The green straps you can see here help stabilize the pipe as well, since they're tied to the concrete foundation that was laid beneath the soil in the beginning. They also spray the soil with water to make it heavier and more stable. Basically, they're trying to recreate millions of years of natural pressure in just a few days. Then they restore the soil's natural balance so that insects and small creatures that used to live there can return. They also added the backup exit shaft, which serves as a secondary elevator for emergencies, and secured it inside the bunker as well. They brought in a material similar to the anode rod used in water heaters, the one that needs replacing every 5 years. It's a 15-pound piece of zinc meant to be attached to the bunker to protect it from corrosion. The zinc provides an extra layer of protection, and once it's connected, it ensures that over time, the zinc corrodes instead of the bunker. Filling the hole back in actually took longer than digging it because after adding each layer of soil, they had to repeat the entire compression process to build up the pressure. Slowly, the pipe began to disappear, and once the final layer of soil was added, the bunker was completely buried. After returning all the soil to its place, they started restoring the original surface layer, the grass. Now it was time to head inside and see what's happening underground. The door was removed, and they set up a temporary ladder to climb down. The bunker looked terrifying from below, which is expected since it's buried 6 feet deep. They began laying down a metal floor to walk on, and because breathing down there could be difficult, they installed 2 fans to pull out air and welding smoke. They started attaching metal strips along the length of the pipe's interior, then installed wooden flooring on top of them. Now the circular pipe had a flat floor, creating a usable surface. This is how it looked underneath the wooden panels. So far, the entire build had taken 2.5 months, with a total cost of about $98,000. That's a huge amount, of course. But Jerry's wealthy, so for him, it's no big deal. And honestly, for what he's building, it's worth every penny. Next, it was finally time to build the elevator. For that, they used a second-hand scissor lift, since traditional elevators are very expensive. They began repairing the lift and removing unnecessary parts to reduce weight and save space inside the bunker. After a lot of work, the custom lift was finally ready, and it was going to be permanently installed inside the bunker. To make a strong base, they poured a large amount of reinforced concrete. Before the concrete dried, they embedded 4 steel anchors into the base, which would serve as the mounting points for the elevator. After a lot of precision work, the elevator was successfully installed on the first try.
Start going slower. Go slow. You look at those two?
Yep.
What? Come up a little.
There we go, I'm on.
Perfectly aligned with the bolts embedded in the concrete floor. They also added a ladder beside the lift in case of malfunction. The elevator was designed especially so Jerry's wife, who uses a wheelchair, could enter the bunker easily and safely. And to properly connect and organize the bunker, we first needed to divide it into sections. So we brought in metal pieces that were installed around the entire pipe. These pieces would help hold the structure together, and at the same time, make it easier to attach rooms or compartments later on. The elevator they built earlier was a real lifesaver at this stage. It was used to lower all the heavy equipment underground. Next, they started working on the electrical system, running cables beneath the floor and carefully setting up the foundation for everything. After a long period of hard work and patience, the entire electrical section was finally completed. Then the rooms and compartments were divided as well. The next step was to build solar panels to power the bunker, providing a renewable energy source that would always be available. They took the 3D designs and sent them to a machine that cut and prepared the materials needed for the solar panels. The metal door that had been cut earlier to create the emergency entrance was now reused to help build the panels. Then they moved on to finish the emergency entrance, carefully designing it so that it wouldn't look like an entrance or exit at all. To disguise it completely, they placed a decorative rock over it, so it would blend into the surroundings and no one would ever suspect there was a bunker hidden below. Next, it was time to install the solar panels above the main elevator. They brought in iron supports, mounted them in place, and added a wheel mechanism to make opening and closing easier. Once everything was secured, they tightened all the bolts firmly. With that, the solar panel base was ready. Then they placed the panels themselves on top, adding a frame around them to make everything look neat and well finished. The wiring was connected, but it still needed some organizing. They couldn't just leave it visible and messy. So they tidied it up completely, making sure everything looked perfect. At this point, the system was producing around 200 watts of solar power, which was more than enough to supply the bunker's needs. And just like that, the bunker was finished. He did a few small things afterward, but unfortunately, he didn't record those parts. Still, I think everything's clear now. And that's the end of this adventure. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. And don't forget to check out the previous videos. Stay tuned for the next ones, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye!